Hey everybody, my name's Ed. Okay, I'm going to try something a little bit different today. I'm not sure if it's really going to work, so, but we'll give it a shot. Today I want to look at three different comic books that kind of deal with sex and relationships. I mean, it's not porn, it's not eroticism or anything like that necessarily. Sunstone is kind of erotic, but in a different way than you're probably expecting. But like I said, they're about sex and they're pretty frank about talking about sex, but they're also more about relationships and friendships and things like that. And like I said, they all approach every one of these kind of approaches the subject a little bit differently. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to kind of look at them all, kind of look and kind of compare and contrast them a little bit. So basically, it's going to be Sunstone Volume 2. Then we've got Sex Criminals Volume 2. And then we have Minimum Wage, So Many Bad Decisions, which is a follow up to a previous minimum wage uh, miniseries. So let's kind of look at them. Okay, so now we have Sunstone Volume 2 from, I always say his name wrong, Stepan, or it's either Stepan Sajic. And basically, the premise is we have these two women, Allie and Lisa. They're kind of bisexual, and they kind of sort of met up for a hookup, and it kind of led to this kind of sort of BDSM type thing. And what started as a kind of hookup turned into a friendship, and now the friendship is kind of turning into a romance. And basically, you kind of get to look at sort of their relationship and then their whole lifestyle, alternative sexual lifestyle, if that's what you want to call it. And that's basically the premise of the comic. And in this volume, it's pretty thin as far as plot is concerned. Basically, we just get to meet more of their friends. We get to learn a little bit more about the lifestyle. Um, we get to see the two of them, Allie and Lisa, kind of talk about themselves a little bit more and see them kind of get a little bit closer. And that's really what it is. It's not plot heavy at all. It's actually very, very character driven. But like I said before, I like it. I think it really works. A lot of it, a lot of what makes it work is, of course, the artwork, which I just think is really great. I'm really surprised that Sajic isn't a bigger fan favorite. But also, I think what really makes it work is the dialogue and the personalities of the characters. Um, you kind of feel, I mean, they're likable people. They are basically people you wouldn't mind having coffee with or playing video games with. There's a big deal with one of the characters is actually a big nerd, outside, or both of the characters. One of the characters writes fan fiction and thing. The other character is a big gamer. And like I said, you see how they are portrayed as not just, it's not just a sex romp, even though obviously sex is part of the story. It's very much about personalities and feelings and relationships and how people relate on a friendship level versus how they relate sexually, and how people who are good friends don't necessarily make good lovers. People who are good lovers don't necessarily make good friends. um, there's a, there's a flashback to one person that they used to know who kind of got involved in a lifestyle, and basically how it kind of went wrong, or something kind of went got out of hand, and somebody ended up being kind of hurt seriously, and about how uh, Lisa actually harbors a lot of guilt over that, for kind of introducing her to the more wilder side of what they're doing. But like I said, I think this is a really Really, really interesting comic. And again, it's something you don't always see done well in mainstream comics. And it's mature in, once again, a level that a lot of other things that pretend to be mature. Oh, I like this guy. This is their other friend who actually kind of helps makes equipment for them, and he really doesn't, he's not into the lifestyle at all, but he thinks it's kind of funny and everything, but he takes it because it's a gig. Hey, I'll make a rack for you or whatever, as long as you pay me. So I find it pretty funny. I like this guy's shirt here. Are you metal? But like I said, it's mature, and it kind of pushes the envelope in a way that a lot of other comic books that pretend to be mature aren't, in the sense that, like I said, you're dealing with adult people in adult situations, but it's done in a sophisticated way. It's done in a way that you get to see a certain amount of poignancy, a certain amount of complexity, and yeah, it's not just drawings of large breasts and things like that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this ah, to anybody that's willing to read something that's a little bit more daring, that might be a little bit out of their wheelhouse. And I admit this comic was a bit out of my comfort zone. I really don't know anything about this lifestyle or whatever, but I took a chance on it, and I'm really glad that I did. So. And that's another thing, I've shown you several pages. There's not really a whole lot of nudity or anything like that. That's another way that the comic books, kind of mature without being, porn or exploitive. Yeah, exploitive. I guess that's what I wanted to say. So yeah, um, highly recommended. Okay, so now Sex Criminals Volume 2 by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. Okay, so for people who aren't too familiar with it, it's kind of a high concept comic. Basically, the idea is the two leads are John and Susie, and the the ideal is basically when they have sex and they orgasm, time stops. So time literally around them freezes, and basically they get the idea that since time has stopped, they're going to go rob a bank so they can get money to save the library that Susie works at. And that's kind of basically what happens. The last volume, we were kind of introduced to the characters and their background, their backstories, and then about them trying to do this sort of thing. And then they find out that there are these other people out here who kind of know about this thing, the so called sex police. And the sex police are basically there to kind of keep everybody that has these kind of sci-fi sex powers, try to keep those people in line. So the sex police are watching them and stuff like that. So basically, where this issue picks up, basically John and Susie decide they're probably not going to, keep up with the whole bank robbing thing. Um, and basically we're introduced to other characters, newer characters. Robert Rainbow, there's a former porn star who's introduced. We get their backstories, and what I like about this issue is we get a little bit deeper into John and Susie's relationship. So it isn't all peaches and cream. This is what happens after a quote unquote honeymoon period, where you're getting to know each other a little bit more, and now you're starting to see other sides of each other. And I actually think it's a little bit better than the previous issue. Because of that, like I said, there's a bit more character development. We're getting to know the characters a little bit deeper. John has these I guess, compulsive disorders, which he's seen a psychiatrist for. So we get to see a lot of bit of that. And, there's actually a fair amount of educational material about sex as well. You know, there's Susie going to the gynecologist. There's stuff about her being on the pill and the pill making her bloated. There's all this stuff about your cervix. And of course, there is more stuff about what's going to happen to the librarian and so on and so forth. Here's bloated Susie. And like I said, I kind of enjoyed it. Again, I get how people think the comics a little bit thinks it's more clever than it really is, but I think there's more gags in it that work than that failed. At least for me personally. And like I said, it's a really interesting comic book that takes a completely different look at, you know, again, sex and relationships and things like that. And like I said, it isn't just about, you know, two hot characters who are into each other. You get a couple of cute people who are cute, but they're very normal. They're very regular looking, and I really like that. And once again, it's also about growing up, getting a lot of misinformation about sex, a lot of sort of we get to hear about it, where they explore about how there's lots of things in the media that aren't true about how what is or is not sexy and whatnot. So, like I said, it's a very, let's see here. It's again, well, it is once again a little bit more mature take on sex and relationships than you get in a lot of other mainstream comics. I did like the dialogue. I like the characters. I like the art. I think the coloring actually helps sell the comic as well, as far as the. I better not show you that. As far as the effects that happen when the time stop happens and a few other things that happen. I read somewhere that sex criminals has actually going to be has been optioned for a TV series, and I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, on one hand, I'm happy for the creators and whatnot, but I think a lot of what makes the comic book work is the fact that it is a comic book, and a lot of the storytelling and the gags and the jokes and the information come with how the words and the pictures work together, and a lot of the visual things that you can only do in a comic book. I don't know if that's necessarily going to translate well to live action. And we'll see. We'll see. And again, here's another comic book that, on one hand, is very frank about sex and whatnot, but not a whole lot of, not tons of nudity. There's a few graphic scenes, but there's not a lot of it. Again, it's not porn. And it's kind of funny, when I first heard the title and I didn't know what it was about, I thought it was going to be some sort of, not quite a Xenoscope type thing, but I really thought they were going to try to be like transgressive, and it's going to be like, huge tatas and blood and stuff like that. And after hearing about what it was, then I was kind of okay or whatever. But I'm glad I finally did take a chance on this comic book. Again, it's another thing I would recommend. Again, it's a lot more sophisticated than you might initially think. So yeah, not perfect comic book, but I would recommend it. Okay, so now Bob Fingerman's minimum wage. So many bad decisions. I have these in single issues, though I'm pretty sure they're probably going to release it in trade. Um, probably any day now. This is from Image, and there's what, 6 issues here. Basically, it's a follow up to his previous minimum wage series that came out a year earlier. And basically, the premise is Bob is a commercial artist, and he's just had a divorce, and he's trying to kind of get back into the dating game. And it's kind of the ups and downs of that. It's mostly told in a humorous and funny type of way. Mostly the art is cartoony. It's pretty caricature-ish. It's not cartoony in a cutesy way. It's cartoony in an extreme way. You know, the characters aren't drawn to look like, you know, funny and inviting. They're funny and crazy looking. But anyway, um, Bob, like I said, is trying to get back into the dating game. He really doesn't have that much of a problem getting laid or that much of a problem getting dates. It's on one hand trying to find somebody he's compatible with, and on the other hand, trying to get beyond his obsession with his ex-wife. And plus, we also kind of see his kind of, career ups and downs and things, and his relationships with his friends and his buddies, and how some of these guys may or may not have their own issues as far as maturity and whatnot. And basically Bob trying to find fulfillment and trying to, kind of trying to do his thing and make his way through life. Basically, it begins. This series begins where he's already dating a woman who actually seems very nice. It's somebody he met. He finds her cute. They have good sex. She's very nice to him, and she actually seems like a really great fit for him. But he ends up breaking up with her because he, just like I said, can't get past his ex-wife. Then he meets a goth woman, and he's dating her for a while, and it seems like he has one issue with her after another. You know, on one hand, maybe she's not the best kisser. On the other hand, she's got these weird habits. He finds out that maybe she doesn't think the world of him, and so on and so forth. And when she breaks up with him, he's actually pretty glad. Then he kind of gets back with his ex-wife, and it seems like she's a little bit more into him than than he is into her. He's starting to remember why why they broke up in the first place, and it isn't even so much that she's mean to him or anything like that, but he starts remembering, like, this relationship isn't going to really work, and it kind of whole thing kind of ends on a kind of uh, maybe a happier note or whatever. But like I said, it's an interesting look. I think Bob kind of avoids the sort of thing you might see in a lot of fiction like this, where he's the only cool guy or the only smart guy, or and he also kind of avoids a kind of self-pity, woe is me type of thing. He's surrounded by crazy people, but he realizes he's not perfect as well. And I think it's the sort of thing you see, well, you don't always see it in comics, you know what I mean? And certainly you don't always get it from the point of view of a guy who is kind of a middle-aged man. I don't know how old he is in real life, but he's got to be in his 40s. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's funny. There's a interesting amount of depth and poignancy to it, a lot of insight to it. So I really liked it. Just to give you a taste of some of the art, like I said, it's um, it's cartoony, but it's not, cutesy cartoony. It's the kind of thing that you would see in more underground and alternative comics from a certain time. It's not the sort of thing you get out of Marvel and DC that often. Oh, occasionally you get these sort of scenes that are in color. Usually they're the dream sequences. They have these, I don't know if they're supposed to be crabs or what, that keep popping up. Crabs or lobsters, some sort of crustaceans. And it's kind of a veiled gag because I guess Bob Fingerman actually used to do work on one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle titles. I really don't know. I don't read too much of the Turtles. But I was trying to find. Oh, I know where it is. There's one interesting issue, or there's a couple interesting issues, because Bob, like I said, just keeps having these reoccurring dreams. Here he's in some sort of post-apocalyptic world there. Here he is with his goth girlfriend with the big teeth, who's a bad kisser. And here, you're seeing a little bit of her pretentiousness, and this all kind of leads up to where she actually invites him to a stand-up gig she's giving, and ends up breaking up with him afterwards. Now, this is actually a pretty interesting issue here. It's a complete dream issue, and of course, it's full of metaphor and symbolism and surrealism and just craziness. This woman here is a woman he dated previously, whose boyfriend was a pot dealer, and so on and so forth. Okay, but like I said, I really did enjoy. Ah, that's weird. Oh, I really did enjoy, and I thought it was, like I said, it was a real interesting take on relationships and romance and sex that you don't always see in like mainstream comics. So okay, and so now you had Sunstone, which was kind of the more romantic comedy slash soap opera comic, with a little bit of eroticism. Not too much nudity, but a fair amount of eroticism. Okay. Then you have Sex Criminals, which is a little bit more cartoony. The sex parts are, well, the I guess so. The sexual parts are a little bit more educational, a little bit more real, but then you have the kind of science fiction element, and like I said, you kind of have the more humorous art, not really intending to be, sexy per se, at least not in a titillating sense, but still very frank about the subject matter. And then you have like minimum wage, which very normal, a lot more realistic as far as the relationships between the people, and nothing too far out or fantastic, but a lot more satire, a lot more caricature, and yeah. So okay, so there we go. I hope this video turns out okay. I kind of feel maybe I should have like written some things down and had a big script or something, but I thought I'd try to do it the way I normally do it, is just kind of sort of wing it, and hopefully it'll come out okay. So anyway, that's it. Please tell me what you think. Thanks, and everybody have a great day.